Melissa Johnson checked the clock while folding laundry in her apartment living room. Her son Tommy would be home from daycare soon. She sighed as she picked up one of Tommy's t-shirts that had gotten a bit small. She needed to buy him new clothes, but this month's budget was already tight. 5 years as a single mother. Melissa had desperately raised her son while working as a cashier at the local supermarket. Her small apartment was modest, but Tommy's drawings on the walls and potted flowers on the windowsill made this place a true home. "Mom. Look, look." The door opened, and a 5-year-old boy with golden hair burst in energetically. In his hands were colorful origami cranes. "Wow, that's wonderful." Melissa stroked her son's head and took the creation. "Who taught you this?" "Miss Chan taught me." "This one is for you. The blue one is your favorite color, right?" Melissa felt a warmth in her chest. No matter how difficult things got, Tommy's smile made it all worthwhile. She hugged her son and said, "Thank you, I'll treasure it." While preparing dinner in the kitchen, Melissa checked her mail. Bills, advertisements, and an elegant cream-colored envelope caught her eye. She picked it up and froze when she saw the sender on the back. Brittany Johnson and Jason Griffiths. It was an invitation to her sister's wedding. Melissa opened the envelope and took out the invitation. The details of the wedding, which would be held next month at a luxury hotel in the Boston suburbs, were inscribed on the invitation decorated with elaborate gold foil. A small sticky note was attached. "No children allowed. Please understand." A bitter smile appeared on Melissa's lips. Her relationship with her family had rapidly cooled since she became pregnant with Tommy. To her father Richard, a wealthy real estate developer, and her mother Diane, a well-known figure in local society, a daughter who became a mother out of wedlock was nothing but a family disgrace. Brittany, her sister, had followed the path her parents expected. After graduating from a prestigious university, she became a manager at a high-end boutique and was now engaged to a successful investor. Meanwhile, Melissa was treated as the failure who had tarnished the family's reputation. "Tommy, go wash your hands. Dinner's almost ready." Melissa placed the invitation on the table and transferred the macaroni and cheese from the pot to plates. She wondered if she should see her family after such a long time. The last time she had seen them was Christmas last year. Even then, her mother's cold gaze and her father's indifferent attitude had chilled her heart. Still, deep down, her wish to repair her relationship with her family hadn't disappeared. Melissa stared at the calendar and checked her shifts. She would need to ask the supermarket manager for time off. She also needed to find someone to look after Tommy. And she needed to think about what to wear. The next morning, Melissa asked her neighbor and close friend Jennifer to look after Tommy. "Of course. But are you really going? To that family?" Jennifer's voice was tinged with concern. "It's my sister's wedding." "Their family," Melissa smiled weakly. "Besides, maybe they'll understand this time." "Be careful," Jennifer squeezed Melissa's hand. She knew how Melissa had been treated by her family in the past. The following weekend, Melissa acquired a modest but elegant dress from a second-hand shop. She budgeted carefully and made an appointment to get her hair done at a salon. "Everything will be fine," she told herself repeatedly. The day before the wedding, Melissa was preparing to attend the bridal dinner. After putting Tommy to bed, she stood in front of the mirror and took a deep breath. "Today, maybe my family will accept me." That was Melissa's wish. Melissa parked her car in the luxury hotel's parking lot and couldn't move from behind the wheel for several minutes. The lights of the restaurant where the bridal dinner was being held shone in the night sky. She checked her appearance in the car mirror and touched up her lipstick. Her newly purchased navy blue dress was inexpensive but surprisingly complemented her slender figure. "It's okay. Just a family gathering," she whispered to herself, but the uneasiness in her chest wouldn't subside. Thinking about meeting her family after so long, especially meeting her sister Brittany's fiancé Jason for the first time, made her hands tremble with nervousness. When Melissa stepped into the hotel lobby, she flinched momentarily at its splendor. Marble floors, chandeliers, and flowers adorning every corner. Her entire apartment could fit into just a corner of this lobby. She gave her name at the reception and was to be escorted to the bridal dinner venue. As she walked down the corridor, she suddenly caught sight of her mother Diane. With her perfectly styled hair, high-end designer dress, and diamond jewelry sparkling at her neck and wrists as always. When Diane saw Melissa, her expression immediately clouded, and she hurried over to her daughter, avoiding the eyes of others. "Melissa," her voice was low, controlled so those around couldn't hear. "Why did you come?" "I received an invitation, Mother." Melissa tried to smile, but her words caught in her throat under her mother's cold gaze. "That was just a formality." "I didn't think you'd actually come." Diane looked around warily. "Have you thought about how your presence might affect Brittany's special day?" Melissa was at a loss for words. The invitation was just a formality? She felt as if a hole had opened in her heart. "Mom, I'm part of the family too, aren't I? What's wrong with coming to my sister's wedding?" "What's wrong is..." Diane cut her words short. Her father Richard was approaching from the other end of the hallway. Tall with a stern expression, Richard was dressed in his usual perfectly pressed suit. He frowned slightly when he saw Melissa. "So you came after all." His voice contained obvious displeasure. "Diane, guests are starting to arrive. We should return to greet them." "Richard, Melissa has..." "I know." Richard turned to Melissa. "Your attendance lowers this family's reputation. Jason's family are all notable figures in this town. How am I supposed to introduce you to them? This is my daughter, who works as a supermarket cashier." Melissa felt a pain like her chest was being constricted. "Dad, are you ashamed of my job?" "The problem isn't just your job," Richard said coldly. "Your entire way of life doesn't align with our family's values." "Melissa." A new voice interrupted the conversation. It was Brittany. Dressed in a white cocktail dress, Brittany was 3 years younger than Melissa, but her sophisticated aura overwhelmed her sister. Beside her stood a tall man with a handsome face. "It must be Jason Griffiths." "I can't believe you actually came." Brittany's voice mixed surprise and anger. "I only sent you an invitation because Mom said I should." "You should send it to all family members," she said. "Brittany, I just came to congratulate you," Melissa said weakly. "Having someone like you here will ruin my special day." Brittany raised her voice. "Are you planning to appear before my friends in that dress you bought with your meager savings?" "Everyone will gossip." Brittany's sister is. "That's enough, Brittany." Richard stopped his daughter. "We shouldn't be having this conversation here." Tears had welled up in Melissa's eyes. She tried to smile bravely, but her lips were trembling. "I understand. I just came to congratulate you. I'll leave now." "Melissa." Diane tried to say something, but fell silent under Richard's stern gaze. Melissa turned on her heel and hurried back the way she came. As she passed through the lobby, she was desperate to hold back her tears. As soon as she reached her car, she opened the door and slipped inside. And then, for the first time, the dam of emotions burst. Melissa sobbed with her forehead against the steering wheel. Why did her family reject her so thoroughly? When she had Tommy, it was certainly unplanned. She had a one-night stand with a man she didn't even know how to contact. But that didn't change who she was as a person. She worked hard and raised Tommy with love. Still, in her family's eyes, she was nothing but a failure. On the way home, Melissa wiped away tears that blurred her vision multiple times. When she arrived at her apartment, Jennifer was waiting with Tommy, a worried look on her face. "How did it go?" Jennifer asked, but she understood the answer just by looking at Melissa's face. "Oh, Melissa. Is Tommy asleep?" Melissa asked, wiping her tears. "Yes, a little while ago. He waited for you to come home, but fell asleep from tiredness." Melissa thanked Jennifer, and after she left, quietly entered Tommy's room. As she gazed at her son sleeping in bed, she felt deep love and sadness. Tommy's distinctive blue eyes and the mole on his jawline seemed familiar somehow, but the face in her memory wasn't clear. Melissa returned to the closet and stared at the dress she had prepared for tomorrow's wedding. Should she stand before her family again? As she hesitated, her phone rang. The display showed "Mother." Hello? Don't come tomorrow. Diane's voice was low, as if she had made a decision. A single mother cashier is a disgrace. Your father and I have spent years building our social standing. You have no right to ruin it in a day. After the call ended, Melissa gripped the phone for a long time. Then, she quietly put the dress back in the closet. All night, Melissa couldn't sleep. Complicated feelings about her family and worries about Tommy's future wouldn't leave her mind. When morning came, Tommy's small hand touched her face as he climbed into bed. Mom, were you crying? Melissa gently kissed her son's cheek. I'm fine. You know what, I thought we'd make today special. How about a picnic in the park? Tommy's face lit up. Aren't we going to Jenny's house? No, today is a special day for just Mom and Tommy. As Melissa hugged Tommy, she made a vow in her heart. Even if her family rejected her, her time with Tommy was her treasure. She has this child. That's enough, she told herself. On the morning of the wedding day, a surprisingly peaceful blue sky spread overhead. Melissa was making chocolate chip pancakes for Tommy and brewing coffee. The morning sun streaming through the small kitchen window filled her apartment with warm light. Mom, should I bring my sandbox set too? Tommy asked with a mouthful of pancakes. Of course. And don't forget your water gun. Melissa smiled at her son. While trying to forget last night's sadness, she was planning today's picnic in her mind. After playing in the park, they would go to Tommy's favorite ice cream shop. She intended to keep her promise to make it a special day. Just then, her cell phone rang. Looking at the screen, it showed Brittany. Melissa hesitated for a moment but decided to answer. Hello? You're really not coming, right? Brittany's voice was tense. I wanted to make sure. Melissa took a deep breath. Yes, as you wished. Good, Brittany said with relief. Well then. Wait a minute, Richard's voice interrupted the call. Melissa, are you really not coming? It's what you all wanted, Melissa's voice trembled. You made it clear yesterday. Yes, Richard's voice was cold. Having poor people around lowers our status. You are the shame of this family. Dad, that's enough, Brittany's voice could be heard. Then she spoke to Melissa again. Losers should stay home and babysit. We'll all enjoy our perfect day. Those words hurt Melissa's heart. But she maintained her composure as she answered, Congratulations, Brittany. And she hung up. Mom, who were you talking to? Tommy asked curiously. Someone from Mom's work, Melissa answered with a smile. Now, when you finish your pancakes, let's get ready for the park. An hour later, Melissa and Tommy arrived at a nearby park. The weather was wonderful, and many families were enjoying the weekend. Melissa spread a blanket in the shade of a tree and arranged sandwiches and fruit she had brought. Tommy immediately ran to the sandbox and began building a sand castle with new friends. As Melissa watched her son's innocent smile, she thought, this might be true happiness. Not money or social status, but pure love and smiles. However, deep in her chest, memories of her family resurfaced with pain. When she was 6, her father teaching her to ride a bicycle for the first time. As a teenager, going shopping with her mother and being surprised with a party dress. The day her sister Brittany was born, her father proudly saying, You're a big sister now. When had everything changed? When she graduated from college and started pursuing her own dreams instead of the path her parents expected. Or when she announced she was pregnant with Tommy. Mom, look. I finished the castle. Returning to reality at Tommy's voice, Melissa headed to the sandbox. The small castle made of sand and water was impressively well made for a 5-year-old. That's amazing, Tommy. You might become an architect someday. When I grow up, I want to be someone who builds buildings like Daddy. Tommy's words clouded Melissa's expression. Tommy didn't know about his father. Who he was, why he wasn't in their lives, these were questions she had been asked several times, but Melissa had always answered vaguely. Maybe you'll meet him someday. Past noon, Melissa and Tommy were sitting on a park bench eating ice cream. Right about now, her sister's wedding must be starting. She could imagine Brittany in her gorgeous dress, walking down the aisle on her father's arm. Suddenly, Melissa's phone began to ring. She was surprised to see it was from her mother. She thought about ignoring it, but immediately there was a second call. This time from her father. And a third, from Brittany. Something must have happened. On the fourth call, Melissa answered. Hello? Melissa, is that you? Her mother's voice was distraught. With none of her usual calmness, she was clearly crying. Come to the wedding venue quickly. Everything is about to be ruined. What happened? Melissa was confused. There's no time to explain. Come right now. The call switched, and now her father's voice came through. Melissa, please. Bring Tommy and come right now. There's no time to explain. It was the first time she had heard her father speak in such a pleading tone. She couldn't imagine Richard Johnson bowing his head to anyone. Dad, what is? Please, her father's voice trembled. Grand Pacific Hotel, Grand Ballroom. Tell security your name and they'll let you through. After the call ended, Melissa stood dumbfounded. Tommy looked up at her with a puzzled face. Mom, what's wrong? Tommy, our plans have changed a bit, Melissa said, choosing her words carefully. We need to go see Mom's sister, your aunt. Aunt. Tommy's eyes sparkled. I have an aunt? Melissa's heart ached. Tommy knew almost nothing about her family. She had deliberately kept him away. Yes, you have an aunt. And a grandfather and grandmother too. They hurriedly left the park and drove to the venue. Melissa's head was full of questions. What had happened? Why were they suddenly calling for her and Tommy? What about those cold words from this morning's phone call? Upon arriving at the Grand Pacific Hotel, a security guard immediately recognized her, as if expecting her, and quickly escorted her. The Johnson-Griffiths wedding, right? Everyone is waiting. Puzzled but holding Tommy's hand firmly, Melissa proceeded down the elaborately decorated hallway. As the doors to the grand ballroom came into view, her heart began to race. Tommy, no matter what happens, don't leave Mom's side, okay? Okay, Tommy nodded nervously. When the staff opened the doors, Melissa gasped. In the lavishly decorated venue, hundreds of guests were seated. And in the middle of the aisle, Brittany stood in her white wedding dress. Beside her was Jason with a solemn expression. The ceremony seemed to have been interrupted. The venue was completely silent, and all eyes were on Melissa and Tommy. Brittany's eyes were red and swollen from tears. Her parents had also risen from the front row and were looking at them with tense expressions. Melissa hesitantly moved forward. No one tried to stop them. As they walked down the aisle, she could see Jason's expression change. His eyes were fixed on Tommy, and his face had turned pale. Is he? Jason forced out the words. Is he my son? Melissa was confused. What do you mean? Jason stepped forward and stared intently at Tommy's face. 6 years ago, at a business conference in San Francisco, was that you? At that moment, something connected in Melissa's mind. San Francisco 6 years ago. A city she visited for a friend's wedding. An attractive businessman she met at the hotel bar. He had said his name was Justin. After a one-night stand with him, she discovered she was pregnant. But she didn't know his contact information or his real name. After looking at Tommy, Jason turned towards his family. An older couple, presumably his parents, stood up from the front row. They too looked at Tommy, clearly disturbed. At that moment, the guests began to whisper. Everyone in the venue was starting to notice that Tommy's distinctive blue eyes and the mole on his jawline were identical to Jason's. Mom. Tommy, frightened, gripped Melissa's hand tightly. Melissa held Tommy close to her chest while looking at Jason. His expression showed surprise, confusion, and definite recognition. He knew. And she too had to acknowledge the truth. What on earth is going on? Brittany cried out. Explain this to me. As the entire venue watched with bated breath, Melissa and Jason were at a loss for words, staring at each other. The tension in the venue increased further, with all eyes on Melissa. She took a deep breath and began to speak in a trembling voice. 6 years ago, I met Jason at a hotel bar in San Francisco, she said. At the time, he introduced himself as Justin. I was visiting San Francisco to attend a friend's wedding and... Melissa stumbled over her words once but continued. We spent the night together. Not knowing his real name or exchanging contact information. The next morning, he had already left the room. She shrugged. When I found out I was pregnant, I had no means of finding him. Liar. Brittany suddenly shouted. Her face was red with anger. You're trying to take everything from me. You kept quiet until today, then suddenly appeared to ruin my wedding. Brittany, I came because I was called, Melissa said quietly. This morning, you all told me not to come. Remember? Calm down, Mother Diane grabbed Brittany's arm. But Brittany shook off her mother's hand. You betrayed me. She pointed at Melissa. My own sister, with my fiancé. She was at a loss for words. Jason said quietly, my relationship with Melissa happened long before I met you. Let me explain, Jason turned to the guests. I met Brittany 5 years ago. After my relationship with Melissa, he continued, choosing his words carefully. This morning, I happened to see a photo of Tommy. It was the only photo of a nephew saved on Brittany's smartphone. Jason took his phone from his pocket and showed the screen. This distinctive mole on the jaw and blue eyes, these are features unique to my family line. A murmur arose from the audience. Jason's parents stepped forward. Tommy, come here, Jason's mother called gently. Tommy peeked out fearfully from behind Melissa. You knew nothing? Diane confronted Melissa. Why did you keep quiet about Tommy's father? Something broke inside Melissa. Emotions she had suppressed for years suddenly overflowed. I tried to tell you, but all you ever cared about was disgrace and family reputation. Her voice echoed throughout the venue. When Tommy was born, instead of blessing him, you said put him up for adoption. You pushed all the responsibility onto me and didn't help. Richard and Diane were speechless at Melissa's accusation. Guilt appeared on their faces. I raised Tommy alone. I worked 2 jobs to make sure he didn't go hungry. When he got sick, I sacrificed sleep to care for him, Melissa continued. And now, suddenly his father appears and... Melissa, Jason stood before her. His eyes were serious. This is shocking for me too. But I have responsibilities. He turned back to Brittany. I'm sorry, Brittany. I'd like to postpone the wedding. I need time to get to know my son and talk with Melissa. The blood drained from Brittany's face. Postpone? Are you serious? She raised her voice. Choose. Me or that loser. Jason took a deep breath. I can't marry someone who calls my child a loser's child, his voice was calm but full of determination. Brittany was dumbfounded. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she covered her face with both hands. What is going on here? Jason's father, Harold Griffiths, stepped forward. His dignified appearance radiated the aura of a successful businessman, similar to Richard. Did your family reject my son and grandson? We didn't know the circumstances, Richard answered apologetically. No, it's not that you didn't know, it's that you didn't want to know, Jason's mother, Eleanor Griffiths, said. She approached Tommy and looked at his face gently. We didn't know about our grandson, but from today, Tommy is a member of our family. At Eleanor's declaration, a small applause arose from the venue. Richard and Diane stood embarrassed. Jason turned to Melissa. Melissa, we'll have time for necessary discussions later. But first, with Tommy. He walked towards Tommy, knelt down, and met his eyes. Hello, Tommy, Jason's voice was gentle. My name is Jason. I'd like to get to know you better. Tommy looked up at Melissa. Tears were streaming down her face, but she nodded slightly. Are you? Tommy asked in a small voice. My dad. Tears welled up in Jason's eyes. He nodded slowly. Yes, Tommy. It seems I'm your dad. Melissa had complex emotions about this situation. However, she understood that for Tommy's sake, she needed to be prepared to accept a relationship with Jason. Let's leave here today, Melissa said. You all need time too. Tomorrow, when we've all calmed down, let's talk, Jason agreed. I'd like to involve my lawyer to find the best way for Tommy. Brittany was quietly crying, surrounded by her friends. Her dream wedding had collapsed, but more than that, she was devastated that her life plan had changed in an instant. As Melissa and Tommy were about to leave the venue, Richard approached them. Melissa, He stumbled over his words. I'm sorry. Melissa looked at her father. For the first time, there was a color of regret in his eyes. Dad, today, show it with actions, not words, she said, and left the venue holding Tommy's hand. The bright sunlight outside enveloped Melissa and Tommy. Though not fully understanding what had happened, Tommy sensed that something big had changed. Mom, what's going to happen now? Tommy asked anxiously. Melissa took a deep breath and gently kissed her son's cheek. I don't know, Tommy. But whatever happens, Mom will always be on your side. 6 months later, Melissa was walking across a university campus. Colorful autumn leaves danced in the wind, falling at her feet. Having finished her education class, she was hurrying to pick up Tommy. With Jason's support, she had returned to university and begun studying for a teaching qualification, her long-held dream. Melissa. Turning around, she saw Jason waving from the parking lot. He was in a suit, apparently just off work. Jason, what's up? It's not your day to pick up Tommy, is it? No, it's not for Tommy, he smiled. I bought a new glove for his baseball practice. I wanted to surprise him. Melissa nodded. Over these 6 months, Jason had actively involved himself in Tommy's life, building a father-son relationship. They spent weekends together, and he called frequently on weekdays. They had been able to smoothly proceed with legal custody arrangements. Have you heard from Brittany? Melissa asked. Jason shook his head. Since moving to the West Coast, she's cut off contact with the entire family. After the wedding, Brittany had continued to blame the family and eventually moved to San Francisco. Nobody could blame her. Her life plan had crumbled in a day. How about your dad and mom? Jason asked. Getting better little by little, Melissa answered. Especially Dad, he's really trying to build a relationship with Tommy. Last week, they went to watch a baseball game together. Richard and Diane initially struggled to build a relationship with their grandson, but gradually deepened their bond with Tommy. In particular, Richard began to recognize his mistakes through watching sports with Tommy. Your parents are coming to Christmas dinner next week, right? Jason confirmed. Yes, Mom said she'll attend too. Unlike before, when she introduces Tommy to her society friends, she speaks with pride, not shame. As they were walking, Melissa's phone rang. An unexpected name was displayed on the screen. Brittany. Melissa. It was her sister's voice, heard after a long time. I'm thinking of coming home for Christmas. Really? Melissa was surprised. Yes. I started volunteering with homeless support here, Brittany's voice had softened from before. Experiencing different people's lives has changed my values. So? You want to see the family? Melissa continued her words. Yes, Brittany said quietly. And Tommy too. On Christmas night, the Johnson and Griffiths families gathered together for dinner at Richard and Diane's home. Richard raised his wine glass and proposed a toast. I'm just beginning to understand what a true family is. It's not just blood ties, but bonds that support each other even in difficult times. Across the table, Melissa and Jason exchanged glances. Their relationship was evolving into something new, gradually growing from friendship into something more. Everyone, I have an announcement, Tommy stood up, looking a bit nervous. When I introduce myself at school, I've decided to call myself Tommy Johnson Griffiths from now on. The room was filled with warm applause. Brittany sat next to Melissa and quietly asked, "Can you forgive me?" Melissa took her sister's hand. "It will take time, but we're family." Richard and Diane watched their two daughters. Diane said to Richard, "What were we afraid of?" Richard answered while gazing at the night sky outside the window, the eyes of others. "But now I understand, what's important is what's in our own hearts." Outside the window, snow had begun to fall quietly. It seemed like a symbol of a new beginning.